Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar for the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development. My name is Renee Wyatt. I work at the NCRCRD as a research and extension specialist. So just to let everybody know, this webinar is being recorded. We would ask that you place your comments and questions in the chat, and we'll have a discussion after the presentation is over. So today we are welcoming Cheryl Burkart-Kriesel and Marilyn Schlake, and they're going to talk about beyond the auction, social impacts of Nebraska's livestock sale barns. So Cheryl is an extension specialist at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She has over 30 years of experience in community development, and she focuses on community planning, new resident recruitment and retention, tourism development, and workforce development. Marilyn is an extension educator emerita at UNL as well. She continues to work with UNL's Department of Agricultural Economics, focusing on rural grocery stores and food access. She brings more than 25 years of experience addressing rural community economic development issues. And if we could go to the next slide, we'll tell you about our last webinar for our spring 2026 series. It will be Measuring What Matters, Linking Community Assets, Vitality, and Well-Being. That webinar will be on May 13th. You can find more information about it on our website. It'll be presented by Michael Wilcox, who is our Associate Director of the NCRCRD, so we're excited for that too. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to our presenters. Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you, Marilyn.
Okay, now I'm going to decrease this.
There you go.
You can see. Okay, I'm going to see if I can advance. Aha, okay, Cheryl, let's kick it off.
Good deal. So we are really excited about sharing this research project with you. It has some real clear extension implications. And you might not think about doing research or looking at social interactions at the livestock sale barns. And it is a little bit different topic, but selling animals is a real common practice in rural areas. And Nebraska is no different than any other state. So as a business, it's really easy to focus on the economic pieces to a business. But what we were really interested in is to kind of lift up the social part as well as the economic and really get a view of this livestock auction experience with both sides. So the study's goal really was to do just that, to really look at that overall experience. And so before we go too far, we want to let you know kind of how we got into this topic a little bit and sort of what grounds our effort here, because it's got an interesting story, and we got into the social value part by way of some research we bumped into in the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. So next, Marilyn. Okay. So why do this? Why study Nebraska sale barns? Well, beside that economics part, we really wanted to kind of look at, do the sale barns offer additional value? And then actually, we've also, in kind of an accidental way, bumped into some research on third places. Now, I don't know if you've had that opportunity or not, but these third places, we'll talk about it in a little bit, are really locations beyond work and family where social capital is really nurtured. So there's all sorts of places in rural communities like this, but we might overlook them. So that was one of the questions we had. And then, is it similar or different to Australian sale yards? And this is where we actually have a colleague that we ran into in Australia at a conference, and she really did this kind of a research in Australia, funded by the Livestock Marketing Association. So the more we listened to her presentation and looked at her publication, we thought, I wonder if it's the same or different in Nebraska. And I wonder if we could do it in Nebraska. So actually, through a small mini grant through the NCRCRD, that's what gave us the funding to do this pilot study. So there is an Australian and international connection here. So that was, of course, one of the things we wanted to look at. Are we different, or are we the same? And then the next one is, should social value be included when considering community economic investments. So often that social value piece seems to be overlooked and kind of invisible. And then can sale barns be outlets for education, health services, or other informational services? And this again goes along following that Australian study where they actually do that. And so that was a little bit different twist. And so we were wondering, can that be an opportunity for Nebraska or for other places in the U.S.? So for our kind of adventure into this, both Marilyn and I come by way of rural prosperity Nebraska background, community development background. So it was really easy for us to look at those social connections, that people bonding, and then also how the place interacts. And so we knew those social connections were there. And then that always usually follows into thinking about it as social capital, the assets that are there, the bridging and the linking. It also really lends well into thinking about third places. And that third places is a sociological term, but it's an old term. It's been there for a long time. And the more we thought about it and the more we read about it, it seems to be a really nice fit for location like a livestock sale barn in rural communities. And then the other piece that's a little bit different that, again, we bumped into through research in these other countries, not so much in the U.S., but more in Great Britain, is this non-financial impacts, the value of it. And there is some research that actually leans into trying to put a value, a financial value, a numerical value to some of these things that people identify. It's really difficult to quantify, but there's sort of a push in some countries to do just that. So our intent was really, could we open the door and take a look at livestock sale barns as a third place and try to figure out what some of the social value really could be. So that's this continuum is really one we're going to come back to at the end to kind of use it as a way to kind of rethink the whole research project. So this third places, social capital in third places, the definition really is it's the meeting ground between home and work where community happens. And it's about communities, places that are social hubs. It's places where where they really are the glue, they sustain community life, and they generate that social capital. And I will tell you, if you look at the bottom of this slide, there's a citation. It was December of last year, or November, December, the importance of third places in rural communities. It's online as a choice magazine, and that's a magazine put out by an Ag Econ association. But that is really a good read and an easy read about the background of third places. And they also did a little informal research. And so this quote in here comes from that paper where they actually queried extension educators, asking them what they saw as potential third places. And so I thought it was appropriate to kind of share that with this group as well. So from their research, they said extension educators pointed to diners and cafes, civic centers, feed mills, grain elevators, post offices, and a variety of small retailers, all sorts of different things, clothing boutiques, all were integral as community assets and as that kind of hub. It looks like Shelley put that link in the chat as well. Thanks, Shelley. I appreciate it. So those are community anchors. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Marilyn, you want to take next?
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Cheryl, for kind of setting the groundwork for us. At the end, we're going to ask you a few questions. So if you're thinking about, as educators, how does this research enhance your awareness of rural third places and social value they create? What does that look like in your community, in your state? I'm sure you've already come into mind some of those places. And as a system, how could Extension leverage third places in the role in building community social capital? So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this research, specifically on the Nebraska livestock sale barns. So just to get into the research, what we did is took a look at 4 locations across the state of Nebraska, and we went to Bassett Livestock Auction, which is up in the north central part of Nebraska, North Platte Stockyards. And the same owner that was at North Platte said, hey, why don't you do this in Ogallala too? Because I'd like to see the differences between our 2 livestock auction houses. And so we graciously decided to go ahead and add Ogallala to that. So that's the 2 cows located on the western part of the state. And then we also purposely looked at Palmyra, which is located right outside of Lincoln. And so it has a more urban flair, and it has different type of livestock that comes through and different type of diversity that we see in the participants that bring their livestock to the auction as well as purchase the livestock to take home. And so we will talk about that a little bit as we go through as well. And so we used a mixed method research methodology for this study. We conducted surveys, printed surveys during the day of the sale at each one of the livestock barns. And through the 4 different locations, we had 145 individuals participate in the survey. And then also when we were at the sale day, we had a structured observation chart that we used to observe individuals. Cheryl got the opportunity to observe people in the cafes, and I was in the sale barn ring. And we had it structured where 20 minutes we would observe people at the first of the hour and then write any notations that we see later on outside of that chart. So that gave us kind of a feel what was going on. And then after the fact, we had asked individuals in the survey if they'd be willing to have us sit down with them through teleconferencing and interview them for a little bit more in depth. So we had some individuals, there was about 30 that actually said that they would conduct the interviews with us, and we were able to capture 16. The timing was off, it was calving season, and so we had to break it up in November and then come back in the January, February timeframe to try to capture those individuals that were busy raising their cattle. So it was a 3-point way of looking at what is happening within that sale barn and trying to capture that information. And full disclosure, we also, for those individuals that participated in the survey, they were awarded a value of $10, gosh, what do we call it? A little trinket that they could use on the farm. And then the individuals that participated in the interviews, they received an online gift certificate as well. So this is a graphic of basically the key findings that we came up with out of our research. And so Cheryl and I kicked around, how are we going to graphically display this? And this is what we, working with a graphic artist, this is what we came up with. And what we found is that there were 3 main areas of experiences that individuals had when they attended the sale barns. Their strength of the culture of place, the individuals that are participating in the sale barn, the history of the sale barn, the managers of the sale barn, the owners, that all comes into play in that community environment, as well as then some of the outcomes is how it supports individuals with their personal well-being and through those interactions that they have. And then also we see that there was a lot of bolstering of knowledge, and there was a deep trust of each other in this process. Basically, they have to trust the sale barn owners to make sure all the documentation is correct and that the information is getting to the buyers and sellers so that they can make informed decisions. So those were some key areas that came about. And then we also saw that outside of that environment that was in the sale barn, it also played beyond the sale barn, outside of that arena, where individuals are taking the information that they gained at the sale barns and using that to make business decision making on their farm or ranch. They had expanded external business opportunities through referrals and then the support of the local economy. And so we're going to go in depth in each one of these sessions. And also to let you know, everything that we have here discussed is also on a website that we will give you. You can download the full report as well. Okay, Cheryl.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we'll start off with this strengthen the culture of the place. And this is really where you see people and place kind of coming together. And there was also a lot of history and connections. And it really wasn't that different than a community. We talk about placemaking. It was really about placemaking in a very unique kind of setting. It was really an interesting thing. So Marilyn, the next one really brings into a couple of pieces. We are going to bounce between some of the survey data and also the interview quotes. So in the survey, we really asked them point blank, why do you come? And reason I attend, socializing, networking, 26%, socializing, 60%. Attending has helped me gain new friendships, 63. Attending has provided me a social place to gather, 50%. And to be honest, I don't think Marilyn and I anticipated numbers quite that high, but they're loud and clear. It's a pretty inviting environment. And then one person, of course, had to say, I'm not going to say like a warm and fuzzy Hallmark card. I will say caring and inviting for sure. So they're there. Absolutely. The culture of place. That's how it starts. You bring those little ones with you to the sale, and then they run around and annoy everybody, running up and down the stairs. You go broke getting candy and pop. But all the while, they're paying more attention than you give them credit for. And when you sit back and watch them, I think it's a pretty good day. And these two little ones were in there. They were pretty much fascinated with the paddle, and I think they're looking at Grandma and Grandpa. So they were having fun before the actual sale.
Yeah, there were no cattle in the ring at the time.
They were fine. They were fine.
Yeah.
But they were having fun.
And so the second component was the enhance the personal well-being. And this is where the individual relationships positively impact the personal mental health. And this was we saw through affirmation and recognition. And this came out clearly in the survey, but also more importantly in the interviews that we conducted with individuals. And you'll see that through some of the quotes that we have. And we do have additional quotes on our website too. So one of the things is the value of personal recognition. We saw the sellers thanking the buyers. We saw the buyers complimenting sellers on the quality of their livestock. And we saw the auctioneers, the owners recognizing families, their livestock practices in support of the sale barn. So we would see a pod of cattle coming through at the sale ring, and it wasn't unusual for the auctioneer to say, hey, this family over here has been a legacy family. We have been with them for generations. We're really thrilled to see the kids here again and recognize the quality of cattle that they bring through every year to this. We really appreciate their support of the sale barn. And so we would see a lot of interaction between individuals that are sitting in the sale ring, that are sitting in the cafe and sharing their stories and just talking when the auction isn't going on. So it was it's a family affair a lot of times, and you will see multi-generations. And they expressed really sincere appreciation for this. And this is one gentleman that said, because there's so much interaction taking place, he says it's kind of like the beauty salon of the cowboy world, which we took to say, yeah, maybe there's a lot of gossip that goes on at this point as well. And then we found that they were creating this community, and Cheryl's already talked about that as well, that there is a sense of camaraderie and support of each other. They're sharing the latest happenings and comforts. We saw individuals hugging each other, especially when they're talking about a family member being ill or a death in the family. We saw the auctioneer, or overheard the auctioneer talking to one family that he was sorry he couldn't make it to the wedding of their daughter, which is a very important function for them, that family. And so it's just those relationships that have been built across the board of individuals that participate in the sale barn. And one gentleman said, yeah, there are some friends that I've had for years through the seasons of sales. I talked to them through the sale barn. And there's some women there too. you get to visit with them, and sometimes they'll tell you more than the men will say on things. I've got a lot of friends that way. And that goes back to the research that Cheryl shared a little bit earlier as to, besides coming to the sale barn to sell your cattle or buy the cattle, it is important the socialization that takes place. And then the other thing is, this really came out in the interview, is that um, the mental health and wellness is an important aspect of these relationships. It helps maintain balance and combat the stigma of isolation and talking about mental health. You have farmers and ranchers that may be out, especially in the western part of the state, in a very remote location, and they may not see people for weeks other than family members, and the stress that they have with cattle prices, with input prices, with weather. Nebraska just experienced a huge disaster with over 700,000 acres of cattle grazing land being burnt up. And some people lost their barns, and luckily no houses. There was one death in the camp as a result of the fire. So those are high stress times, and they really see the value of having this relationship through the sale barn with the other individuals that are experiencing this, or at least supporting them. And a couple of comments that we had through those interviews were that kind of talking about the isolation. You're kind of a loner out there in the hills by yourself. Yeah, the sale barn is a social event. Just being around other people gives you a sense of not being alone. And then another one says, those of us in the cattle industry, talking to cows is probably better for us than talking to people, but for our mental health, that's probably the opposite. And this final quote really kind of comes into the stress that the farmers and ranchers are dealing with. He says, I guess it's drilled into us, especially as males versus females. You're to be strong, tough, not show a lot. And that ain't always the healthiest way to do it. And I will tell you, I learned it the hard way. Oh, I had. I lost my dad, and things were pretty tough. And my wife made me go talk to somebody. Probably about the third visit in, I thought, maybe there's something to it. And come to find out there was. I found out there was a simple chemical imbalance in my body, and they prescribed me medicine that I wish I had found years earlier. But now I'm never afraid to tell somebody. So what a
That looks like Marilyn might have froze up. So I will jump in and continue on. But now I'm never afraid to tell anybody. So we'll see if Marilyn comes back. She's
Cheryl,
also, whoops, yes.
Cheryl, would you like me to try to pull up the slides on my end?
Sure, that'd be
Okay.
great. That'd be great. Absolutely. And then we can go from there. Um, we we anticipated finding out some of this personal well-being part, but we didn't really know exactly how it was going to come up. But we opened the door for these kinds of comments, and they came in. They came in. So we were kind of surprised in some respect, but then in another we were not. So we'll just kind of wait for the next line of this to come. I will tell you that that piece, that health and wellness piece, actually came up in the Australian study as well. So we weren't, in some respects, surprised about that. So if you can go to that, I think it's another couple ones. Okay, actually this one. Just there we go. Impacts on physical health. There was also not only the health and well-being part, but people also recognize that just the very nature of the sale barn, it has its ups and downs, and there are trade-offs as well. So as hard as they try, they are still dirty and dusty places. They're going to have cattle dander and ammonia smells and all those other kinds of things. So their quality isn't great around sale barns. So when you open that door, how does that affect you and your personal well-being? You get both sides of the coin for sure. Now, the final one of this is that bolster knowledge and trust. And it's really about these informal conversations that foster that knowledge base and that shared knowledge base. and helps build the confidence in marketing and operations. And so if you think about it, that social experience makes the knowledge resonate. And it's not that you want to listen or go to somebody for knowledge. It's got to be a trusted source because your business depends upon it. So again, those social relationships bring a lot of value to the business. And if you noticed in that overall graphic, there were a lot of arrows. And not only arrows between these three on the top, but also going down below as well. And they, in some respects, are kind of webbed in. But, and so you need to think of them really as kind of that whole experience. So that sharing the knowledge, the buyer-seller relationships, and then the relationship with the owners and the auctioneers. They appreciated that, and they learned from that, and there's a strong trust over time. Okay, and here we have again a quote and some of the information from the survey. And so additional reasons why individuals attend livestock auctions. Again, some of these questions we asked in a little bit different way to get to bring in some other aspects. So to gain new industry information, 25%, conduct market research, 55%. They're there to learn, and they acknowledge that all the time. Support a local business, seek a business opportunity. A couple years ago, I'd gone to a bred cow sale, and a guy helped me understand the bred heifer market a little bit. He was able to show me something I didn't understand, and now I do. It was an interesting education on how the market works. I learned something that was, well, it's pretty valuable. It comes in handy. Again, I really think it's important if you can get there in person and people can see you and talk to you, because a lot of times I'll see people in the lobby talking. A buyer will be talking to a seller and asking them questions about their cattle. Again, that trust relationship then helps really build on that knowledge, and you're much more likely to understand that and to get involved in that once that trust relationship is established. There's also trust and knowledge between owners and auctioneers. And so I've got a good relationship with one of the auctioneers. He knows my type of cattle. He knows the bulls I buy. He takes it upon himself to get to know you. I think a good auctioneer, whether he's a barn owner or hired as the auctioneer, makes the barn successful or unsuccessful. He can make you want to be there. And I will tell you that actually we had a colleague overhear a conversation with a group of gentlemen who had recently bought a sale barn. And one of the gentlemen said, I want this final report because I want to share this with the people who recently purchased the sale barn, because they need to know this. They need to know that it makes a difference, that the auctioneer and the owner are engaged. Okay, Marilyn, are you back? Nope, she doesn't have audio. So she's still, so I will just jump in and fill in. So the bottom part of this model here really talks about more the pure economic aspects. And those are kind of more the external pieces. And those might be front of mind when you think about a sale barn. And so the first one there is positive impacts on operational decision making. And again, the knowledge and trust part feeds right into those decisions, right? They learn something, they're going to implement or not implement based on that. Expand external business connections or networks. This is where you're at a sale barn also to know who's doing what and where, and make some of those connections. And then it's also lastly about supporting the local economy or that larger community as a whole. So it's interesting to see what some of those other guys are doing. You might pick up some tips on what maybe I should be doing that I'm not doing. So again, but it's not just knowledge, it's knowledge from a trusted source. Okay, positive impacts on that decision-making part, bringing that knowledge and applying it. again, they gain new industry information. That market research is right there at the top. Supporting local businesses, seek business opportunities. And then a few just came out and said, I'm looking for work. I'm there to make those connections so that I can build up my work base. Because most of those folks honestly have, if they don't have a sideline a job or sideline mini business, they know somebody who does. So it's all about those local connections. So you bounce ideas off somebody. Say if you think this will work. Have you tried this before in the past? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It costs too much. So you might ask. Okay, so these why attend the opportunities gained? So in the survey, I attend for business opportunities, about 18-20%. But attending has helped me gain business opportunities, almost 60%. So sometimes there's a guy who wants my phone number. Do you do any repair work or carpenter work? Well, yeah, I do. Could I have your phone number? So we've gotten some work through the sale barn by meeting people. They want my number. They call later. I have a project for you. Can you come do it? There's also the opportunity because everyone is connected in some way, not only rural, but also with the cattle industry. There's also a lot of connections with different aspects of that, whether it be trucking or feed hauling or supplements. So you can see where that networking part has a lot of value. Now, we did ask a question in the survey about if they noticed any changes when in a community where a sale barn was closed. And so in the survey, they said, well, 34% said the loss of other businesses showed up, loss of a place for people to connect to, loss of a restaurant or a place to eat, which is a big deal. And then loss of a community identity. A few of them said really didn't see any changes. And then I think, I think this question caught some folks off guard a bit. And they said, I don't know. And so as a researcher, if 41% say I don't know, that just almost begs for follow-up questions or continued research in some of those areas. Because I want to know what that was like. So one person made a comment that I'm like 30, 40 miles from town, so I just can't go there every day. A lot of times if there's something I really need, well, I'll stop and pick it up. I might come home with a horse trailer full of something. You never know. And actually in the interview there, he kind of giggled a little bit that his wife maybe didn't appreciate that so much, but he was having a little fun.
Hey, Cheryl, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
I'm
can.
sorry about that, everyone. Not sure what happened here. So,
So do you want to take
yeah,
the
I'll take
contributing
it over
thing?
here. Yeah. So a couple of other things that came out through the survey and then through the interviews were these smaller contributing themes that are worth mentioning, but they didn't rise to the top. Many of the sale barns are now offering online auction sales, and we did ask this in the survey: how do they use the online auction sales, if they even do? And they were about 50-50 as to some use it, some don't. And so it's a lot of times the reason they didn't use it was because lack of internet in some of these very remote areas out in western Nebraska, or it may be that the lack of technology knowledge on how to access the sale barns, or not sale barns, but the online auctions, and how to actually place bids and such. But then the others on the flip side said it's a convenience factor. They can look at the cattle to see what's coming to market. They can do market research and find out when would be a good time, when the price is working for them to bring cattle in too. So it's kind of 50-50, but it really lends to the opportunity to do more education on how to do livestock auction sales. And then resiliency on the farm and ranch, these connections that people have made through the sale barns helps them in times of crisis, and they may lend a helping hand, right now with the fires, they're supporting each other through donating hay bales for the cattle, or there may be other type of equipment that they're needing. Fencing is a big thing right now as well. And we've had donations provided through the livestock auction for individuals that are ill and they may sell cattle or something to support that person and donate the proceeds to that person. And then finally, the respect for others that are in the industry, that are participating in the livestock arena, those relationships, and just really acknowledging the heritage that some families bring to the livestock auction and to the industry and what they've done to support the farm and ranches and keep those going. So that came out loud and clear as well. So Cheryl, next slide.
Okay. We're going to kind of go back to that social value continuum. And for us, this was a little bit of a roadmap that kind of helped us pull this project together a little bit. So we kind of assumed that there would be a social connections. And from the evidence and the comments that people gave us, it was obvious that there were a lot of bonding and place connections that fed into social capital and how that the people, the bridging and the linking really made a difference in people's lives. It also, for us, also lifted up the sale barn as one of those third places that's important to people. And it got us also started thinking about what are those other third places that maybe are a little bit invisible, that maybe need more recognition. And then finally, it kind of flowed then back into what were some of those social values and how those social connections really fed into some of those operational decisions. I mean, it was very clear that that trusted knowledge source made a difference to their business. And so, but this is also an area where we really think this is a pilot study. We just kind of cracked open the door on this. And we would love to be able to do more with and get more involved in that piece of it, because I think could be a whole lot there, but we just sort of opened the door. So when it comes to research and extension implications, I think it gives us the opportunity to maybe sit back a little bit and think about the social and economic part and how the two work together. So it was very clear knowledge and networks were there in a big way, that the social part really helped build the trust that allowed some of that information to be implemented then in their business. There was also a pretty heavy component of how that interaction in that local sale barn made an impact on the local community too. And so again, I think, at least in our communities in Nebraska, the sale barn can be really easily overlooked as a place that creates that glue and also is that economic piece that's so important. And then on another whole level, it's those personal benefits, the wellness, and that connecting, that culture of belonging. It's there loud and clear. And so in the next one, we took it one more step and really, we've had the opportunity to share this report with a couple of groups in Nebraska, the Nebraska Cattlemen's Organization for one, and then we had a pretty good showing with a Women in Ag conference in Nebraska. And so we asked for sort of their ideas on what does then this mean? Where could we take this information? How does it change what we do? And some really interesting ideas, because the sale barn kind of culture is intergenerational. They really suggested maybe we need extension needs to work on an FFA curriculum to really lift up that sale barn culture, so that as young people progress, they're more comfortable with the nuances of that kind of environment. That sale barn culture also, if you think about it, because we had a pilot, one of the sites was in that Lincoln, Omaha area where we had a lot of different cultures coming in. That also could be for adults as well, so that they become a little more comfortable with that. Mentorship possibilities could be offered. Again, youth as well as maybe businesses getting into another branch of the cattle industry. So, I mean, think we need to think broadly of what those could be. They really appreciated the family style events. So we did have the opportunity on one of those pilot studies locations to sit in on a day where it was an appreciation day. And so the banks in the community had helped finance a lunch. And of course, that created a really nice turnout. But people really enjoyed having that opportunity to kind of have that food there, the informal time, because there's always sort of downtime at sale day as well. And that just gave them another reason to connect with people. Some of the extension folks that we've run this by said maybe we have a role in helping use social media a little bit more to really help continue some of these connections. And maybe there's an opportunity to maybe push that social media part also in other venues, maybe at the sale barn or with the auctioneers or the trucking part. Again, just to kind of keep that social piece going, just as a thought. And then, of course, the health and wellness monitoring options. This is where we kind of picked up from our friends in Australia, where there's sort of an open tent at many of their large sale yards, and it's kind of a common practice so that people can, in that downtime, kind of pop in, maybe do a blood pressure screening. But if you think about it, there could be all kinds of other things too. I mean, diabetes screening. There could be even a quick look on for skin cancer too, for that matter. I mean, we have kind of opened the door a little bit. Husker Harvest Days does a little bit of that. Well, this might be another opportunity. We don't know exactly what that would look like or how often or what, but it might be there. And so it's worth kind of exploring. And I think we had a great interdisciplinary team of folks on this project. And some of our folks that are on the beef team really are kind of running through that and thinking through it a little bit harder. What could we do? Also about just information, sharing information. They also suggested, could we have like little information sessions maybe before or after? Are there ways to distribute information on sale days? So I think it's got our folks in Nebraska thinking about some different opportunities, and it'll be fun to see what happens down the road.
Okay, well, this is an opportunity for you to share with us some of your thoughts as well. And we're coming back to the questions that we posed earlier. And so the process that we're going to do is if you can put your questions in the chat, and I think Renee is going to monitor those for us. And we'll do our best to answer your questions or ask your questions, and we'll do our best to answer those. But how does this enhance your awareness of rural third places and social value they create? Or else open up your mic too. That's an option. Raise your hand and Renee can open it up. One of the things, just to have you thinking here, when Cheryl and I went to Australia, this was the first time we really heard about social value. And it was like light bulbs going off in our heads going, wow, how can we measure this? And what's one of the things that we know in this pilot study, we're not able to quantify what that may be. And that would, I think, would be the next stage of research that's needed is how do we quantify this and use it as an economic tool for economic developers to say, beyond looking at the economic benefits that a company has or a place has to the community, what is that social value? What does it bring to the table, and how important is that to the community and making decisions that impact the community going forward?
The other question that we posed here really was thinking about the extension and thinking about it at a system level, not only us as individual awareness, but also within the extension system. Are there ways to leverage these third places? And really, it's kind of like meeting people where they're at, and their role in building community social capital. So it looks like we've got a question in there or a comment.
So we've got a couple comments just on how great this webinar was, and they appreciate you expanding the language for describing places that provide social value in small communities. We don't have any questions yet. I just want to echo what the other two participants said. This is great. Okay, I think we do have a question here. I would hope the mental health benefits would extend beyond the sale barn and could be added to the three business benefits that were listed. For example, development of new friendships and support systems, and increased resiliency. Any plans to look into this? If this is demonstrated, your study image may need to be updated.
You know, I would love to go back and take a look at what has happened as a result of that resiliency question. Given that, the 700,000 acres that have burned in the state of Nebraska. And I know sale barns were participating in some of the supports for those farmers and ranchers. And, go back to those individuals and say, what happened? How did this impact you? Where are those social relationships very important? I know there's some research that shows social capital and how it is impacted by, or how social capital impacts resiliency. And so it would be interesting to see that, most definitely.
That was great. Does anybody else have other questions? I think as you were going through your presentation and discussing, I was thinking of different places we could extend this research because I think it is very valuable, and especially when we think about, our role as community development educators and in that research space, where else could we apply this and see if we find similar results?
Definitely.
One of the things that popped up is we started thinking about, so where are all these other third places? And one of them that we thought of kind of immediately that popped up is the whole phenomena of farmers markets. And what is that like? And there are some communities where that's a much more established, long running kind of thing. But I think where you look, it just there's a lot of opportunity. And again, it's really easy for that to be invisible. And I think one of the things, for me at least, is listening to these stories and seeing the information in the surveys and in the during the interviews. It made that invisible part way more visible. And so I hope that that's one of the takeaways, is that people start looking at where else are there places in their community, and then how does that create value? And then, because value is it's important that sometimes that be lifted up, because what's also quantified is valued. So sometimes you have to lift it up, be a little bit more articulate about what that contribution is so that it's acknowledged. And so again, I think anything we can do to kind of help in that regard is a real plus.
So Cheryl, do you want to go to the final slide here? Oh, good. I'm glad you're thinking of places. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Danielle. We have all of the research available at cap.unl.edu/salebarns. We have information that you can go through the different pages, and then you can also download the full report. And so we've been using this website to really leverage our distribution and dissemination out into the public. And we've been very fortunate. We tried a new way to do dissemination. So we had 1 day media blast. And that day we released all social media. We had podcasts go out. I was fortunate to get on RFD TV that day and do a 4-minute segment live. And then we also had other social media people and our media connections across our campus really support and get the information out. And as a result of that, we've had probably 20, 30 different news outlets pick it up. We've had radio stations pick it up across the state and actually across the country. And to report, I mean, our university says, well, what is the numbers that you have? And that's very difficult to measure, but the potential viewership is about 68 million. And now we don't know how many actually viewed it, but then looking at all the outlets that picked up the story, that's how many that they have listed on their websites and stuff for distribution potential or viewership potential. And so we still have some things that are going out. Cheryl will hopefully have a podcast going out here soon, and it's on Yonder Radio.
Yeah, Yonder Radio. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we're still getting some play on this and hoping just to get some awareness that, these places are very important, especially in our rural communities, and some communities that are losing these types of social connections. I see it in my small town that I live in, and there's no place for people to go. And so you lose those bonds, and it's easier for people to leave the community. And if we can find a way to ensure that those social bonds are connecting, that people have a place to socialize, not just through work, but through other means, it may help with our communities to help keep them going forward and surviving, especially in our remote areas. Oh, and also on that website, we have all of our instruments down there too. So if you are interested in doing this type of research or following up and looking at some other places, all the instruments are available, and we're glad to share those as well if anybody contacts us.
Thank you for sharing all that information. I think that we have a lot of different perspectives on how this could be, adapted in different settings. I'm thinking, even small businesses, looking at rural small businesses and the place that, they allow for a place for people to connect and feel that sense of community. So it's very, very interesting. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If not, and if you registered for the webinar, then you will get the recording link and the slides, I think in PDF version probably. And then there's also a survey at the end of the webinar that we would really appreciate people completing. If anyone has any questions, now is the perfect time to ask. And
I'd just like to do a shout out to NCRCRD for just funding this project. Otherwise, without the seed funding, this would have never happened. And we didn't really know kind of what we were getting into. We thought we had a good idea. We thought it would be great to compare Australia and Nebraska, but the funding made it possible. And so we really appreciated that opportunity.
Most definitely.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. I love the shout outs for NCRCRD funding. That's great. Yeah, those small grants programs, we've had some really impactful projects come out of there, and just giving that seed funding. We're glad we're able to do that. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. Just a reminder, May 13th, we'll have our next webinar, the last one in our spring series for 2026. Then we'll be back. We'll take a couple months off in the summer, and then we'll be back in the fall. The next webinar is Measuring What Matters, Linking Community Assets, Vitality, and Well-being. Thank you again to Marilyn and Cheryl. This was great, great information. We're excited to hear all about your study. with that, hopefully we see everybody next month.